Hey guys, today we're going to be making another Pokemon. One of the ones that have been requested a lot is Mew, so that's who we are making today. If you have any requests for other Pokemon you'd like to see, definitely let me know in the comments. For the sculpture, you can really use any color of clay you want, so if you have any scrap clay laying around, it's perfect for this project. Because Mew has a light pink color, I am using a really pale pink, but if you're using a different color of clay, you can just paint it after baking. First you want to take a piece of wire that you bend and twist a few times. It doesn't matter what type of wire you use. Basically any metal wire is going to be bakeable for the temperature that you're going to be baking the polymer clay at. Add some tin foil just to create a base for the head and then add some clay on top. Mew has a really simple head, it almost looks like some sort of cat. So you just want to add some definition around the snout or nose area, and then if you want you can add a mouth. I chose not to just because it wasn't visible in the picture of the original Mew, at least not when his or her mouth is closed. And then you also want to mark off where you want the eyes. For the eyes I'm using pre-baked pieces of white clay. You don't need anything to adhere them, and then you just want to use the clay around them to make a nice frame. Next you want to cut out and add the ears. And similarly to my Pikachu, Espeon and Umbreon, I'm changing the ears so that they're not those sausages or stumps, and making them look more like realistic animal ears. This is all just a matter of personal preference. If you want to make it more like the original character, feel free to do so. If you feel like the joints for the ears are going to be too fragile, you can add some liquid clay to the back just to strengthen them. Next I added some clay to the body, and after doing this I pre-baked it, although this is optional. After pre-baking I added some more clay around the hip area, not so much to make the butt appear more voluptuous, but more so to make it easier to attach the thighs. You can then make the hind feet, and for these I did pre-bake them after giving them a small bend, just to help them hold the shape. Add these to the body, and then I also cut off the excess wire except from one strand, which is going to be the armature for the tail. The tail is also what's going to enable this character sculpture to stand on its own, because the balance point is not that great. Add a thin snake of clay to the tail just to add some thickness, and then lastly you want to make the arms. Once you're done, you can bake it one last time. After baking, just because some of the wire inside the tail is still visible, I painted this using white acrylic paint. And then the fur or fibers I'm using for this project is Ingeo or something like that. I'm going to put it on the screen just so you can see how it's spelled. This is made from corn, or the plants from corn, which I think is pretty cool. And it is very similar to the milk protein fibers I usually use. As always, you just want to glue this on in small sections, then let the glue dry and trim off any excess. And just in case someone comments something like Mew is more like an alien-like or man-made creature, it doesn't have fur, This is just my personal interpretation of what I think a more realistic version would look like. If you prefer to have Mew without fur, feel free to make that. Another really cool option would be to make it more like a reptile, and then of course you could leave it without any real texture, which is going to make it look either like the original Mew character or like a naked mole rat. One of the reasons why I chose to add fur, other than the fact that it looks really cute and fluffy, is because it reminded me of a specific type of mouse. I don't remember what it's called in English, but it has a really long tail with almost like a pom-pom at the end, and I just really wanted to make that. For the majority of the tail, the hind feet, arms and the back of the ears, I did use flocking powder, and for the rest of the sculpture I applied the fur in longer pieces and then trimmed off the excess. This is the part of the process that takes the longest. The Pokemon are really easy to sculpt, they don't have that much detail, or at least most of them don't. So the drying time of the glue when adding the fur is really what takes the longest. If you want to make some accessories, I do have a tutorial showing how to make a Pokeball, which you can find in my Pikachu tutorial. And if you're going to be making any food, I would suggest something like muesli. No? Okay. These fibers are not fully opaque, and so some of the pink from the sculpture is going to show through, which is going to give it a really pale pink tint, which is also what I kind of wanted. But this is also why, if you're using a different color of clay for the sculpture, you do want to paint it before adding the fur. For the shading, I'm going to be using one of my pan pastels. You can use any other type of pastel. The reason why I'm using this one is just because it had a really nice pale pink shade, but also because they come off so easily from the pans, and they're just really nice to work with. I'm not shading the entire sculpture, I am leaving some areas kind of like the color of the fur and the base. And so the areas I'm adding the most pastel to are the tip of the ears, or the back of the ears, then the tip of the arms and the tip of the hind feet. Once you're done, you can spray it with a fixative to protect the pastel, and then I painted on the eyes using acrylic paint. Seal this with a glass glaze and add some paint between the toes and fingers or front paws, and you're done. As a very last thing, I decided to make a moon just to use for a background because I thought that would look really cute together with the character. So for this, you just want to cut out the basic shape from a sheet of clay, then use your finger to round off the edges, and then bake. After baking, because I was using a very dark shade of clay, I painted it using white acrylic paint, and then I added some glue and glitter on top. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you have any requests for other Pokemon you'd like to see, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.